A man named Mueller shows up in his vehicle and drives a cow into a nearby forest in the isolated, fenced-in opening scene of the show. Suddenly, after he has left, the livestock is attacked by an unseen yet ravenous creature that swiftly kills it. Then, as they get ready for a vacation, we meet young Josie and her family. The fact that Josie's mother Charlotte chastises her for playing with an unknown dog makes it evident that not everything in the family is ideal. They travel to a distant region via ferry, where they ask passers-by for directions to Skovangen. Remarkably, every stranger they see on the trip advises them to stay on the seaside route. The children are fighting in the back seat of the car when their preoccupied father Mads smashes something by accident. The car's fender has a dark stain that appears to be tar, but there is no sign of the critter they struck. Josie doesn't realize that everyone else is prepared to leave the place. Mueller shows up at this point, suggesting they leave since it's a private road, while she follows the tar trail into the grass. After advising the family to avoid the surrounding fence and use the seaside route, he appears upset but finally becomes calm. Mueller is asked what's behind the fence by the inquisitive Josie, but he remains silent. He is written off by the family as a cranky local and they leave. Later, when the family comes home for the holidays, their son Casper gets upset because their cabin doesn't have Wi-Fi. Josie decides to go exploring outside the cabin because there isn't much electricity or Wi-Fi there. After finding a barn by accident and exploring its contents, she becomes concerned about why they aren't focusing on the animal they hit earlier. She wants to look into the secluded route that Mueller warned them about because she is naturally curious. Later, during a grocery shopping trip with his mother, Casper notices Liv and becomes attracted to her. After Casper gets close to her, they stroll beside the river and enjoy some quiet time together. As this is going on, Charlotte starts talking to a local named Karen, who promptly advises her to stay on the beach route. But when Josie stays in her room and declines to eat supper with her family that evening, things take an unsettling turn. She hops out of her window and rides her bike outside, despite the fact that it is nighttime, out of sheer curiosity. Though she is obviously headed toward trouble, she takes a flashlight. She soon comes to the metal fence that earlier on had advised her not to get near. She discovers a wounded animal, possibly the same animal their car struck. As she approaches it on the grass outside, Josie wraps the critter in her blanket out of sympathy and is ready to bring it with her. She decides to flee in terror at the same moment, taking the monster with her after hearing strange noises. Back at home, Josie gently places the weird creature in the abandoned barn, carefully laying it down on the tractor. The creature gives off a piercing cry as it assaults her as she attempts to approach it. Subsequently, Josie discovers that her hands have the same black tar. In the meantime, Karen notices that a lot of birds are starting to leave the forest. She voices her worries and menacingly recommends Mueller sacrifice another one, creating a spooky atmosphere, possibly alluding to the cow from the first scene of the show. Replying to Josie, her family gets together for breakfast the next morning. Josie pretends to have something to do at home and declines to go on the Christmas tree hunt with Mads, Casper, and Charlotte. Following their departure, the family leaves Josie by alone with the enigmatic creature, which turns out to be an elf. Immediately after the family leaves, Josie goes inside the barn and is able to entice the small animal to come nearer so she may administer to its injuries. Still hiding, though, is the creature's fear of her. As Mueller and his companion are bringing the cow close to the fence, Mueller spots some tracks on the ground. Mueller then asks his friend to take the cow into the forest, leaving him to look into a crucial matter. A while later, out of nowhere, Casper walks into the barn, looks about for Josie, and asks her what she's doing there. She tells him the truth and asks for his assistance because she has run out of options. After some convincing, Casper joins Josie's team, and they decide to keep this discovery a well-guarded secret. At first, he leaves the barn to complain about Josie to the parents. After that, Casper even helps dress the wounded animal with bandages. Mueller is seen peering through an aperture and spotting the two of them when they are occupied tending to the baby elf. He knows that this could be problematic and panics, calling his friend Anders right away. Telling Anders that one of the young elves has been taken by the kids, he begs him to leave the forest right away. Anders is dragged into the woods by a big object that assaults him, but sadly it is too late. Mueller later witnesses a graphic scene when he arrives to save his friend's severed skull bouncing on the bonnet of his automobile. Liv then expresses her displeasure at living in a village as opposed to a city while speaking with her grandmother Karen. Mueller shows up there just then and shares some upsetting news with them both. He shows off his chopped skull and the bloodstains on the car to prove that Anders is no longer with us. Josie and Casper return to the barn in the interim to tend to the young elf. They are shocked to find that the creature has already consumed and left a disfigured carcass of a cat. When Casper notices this, he advises them to return the small animal to the forest and tell their parents everything. Nevertheless, Josie continues to cuddle and show love to the elf despite the gory sight. She even gives it the name Kiko and declines to refer to it as a monster. Following a service for Anders, Karen asks for everyone's cooperation and gives the villagers her word that the tragedy won't happen again. The family on vacation is then invited to a gathering she sets up and is hosting for coffee. Josie simply wants to stay at home with Kiko, but Charlotte enthusiastically agrees, seeing it as a chance to meet the people. Charlotte, on the other hand, ignores her daughter and drives her to the conference. Karen responds that the woods were blocked off because of a horrible accident at the sawmill that resulted in chemical contamination of the land when Josie questions her about the fenced-off forest during their meeting at her house. In order to keep guests out, she also says that they made the decision to fence it off. A while later, Josie excuses herself to visit the restroom. When she discovers odd skulls, bits of wood and a radio in one of the upstairs rooms, she ducks out of sight just as Karen shows up to talk to Mueller about the search of the barn, which doesn't seem to turn up anything. When Josie hears this, she becomes frightened and leaves the party. She dashes back to the barn by the seaside, where she watches out for Kiko. Sadly, Mueller catches her off guard and takes Kiko, stuffing it into a sack and running off with it. Mueller is unaware that Josie is following him into the woods in stealth, which reveals that the islanders are aware of the forest elf they are housing in the barn. She also reveals that the elves are what's behind the fence and that they're the cause of previous deaths in the foreboding dark woods. Mueller asks the elves to leave them alone as he leaves Kiko. Following his departure, driven by a desire to locate Kiko, Josie sets out into the unknown. When the parents inquire about Josie while she's away, Casper chooses to come clean and tells them that they were keeping an elf in the barn. Initially irritated, Charlotte and Mads think it's all a joke, but eventually they begin to worry for Josie. When the family eventually arrives at the gated area, they find Josie's abandoned bike. While Charlotte and Mads stay at the scene looking for hints to unlock the fence, Casper is assigned to go to Karen's house and beg for a key. Josie goes into a house behind the gate to look for Kiko, but she is followed by a much larger elf. She runs to an abandoned sawmill out of fear and, in a last-ditch effort to protect herself, sets off the machinery to keep the threatening elf at bay. Sadly, the elf locates and attacks her, but Josie manages to kill one of the larger animals, pushing its body into the running machine. As Mueller gets to the fence, Mads and Charlotte beg him to let them in. At first, he declines, but as Mads takes his gun, the situation gets heated. After a struggle breaks out, a shot is fired, breaking the conductors and cutting off the fence's electricity. Charlotte uses Mueller's keys to unlock the fence's door and goes inside, after Mueller's leg becomes trapped in a metal trap. Karen, on the other hand, declines to give Casper the fence's keys, but Liv steals them and heads toward the fence with Casper. With the aid of a returning Kiko, Charlotte eventually finds her daughter, who has made her way back. Nevertheless, Charlotte becomes so terrified and furious that she begins to kick dirt and muck at the little elf and demands that it leave. She snatches her daughter and walks across the fence, ignoring Josie's cries. A swarm of elves is starting to close in, which is the issue. They begin to beat on the fence, trying to break free, realizing it is no longer electrified. Later in the evening, Casper and Liv eventually reach the fence, only to discover that the power is out and there's a giant gaping hole in it. When they witness this, they are certain that the elves have fled and are currently at large. Josie and Liv's families meet at Mueller's house in the meantime, where the injured farmer is having trouble walking after coming into contact with the bear trap. Josie's parents are reprimanded by Karen for what they did, and she stresses that they try to fix the fence and find Casper and Liv. She also confesses solemnly that nothing like has ever occurred in the past. Liv and Casper leave the settlement to alert the other residents, as night gives way to daylight. However, when they get at their objective, they uncover a horrible scene. Everyone in the village has been slain. As it happens, the fence was built to keep the elves apart from the humans who had landed on the island, where they had always lived. The elves haven't been kind to outsiders after losing their territory, and it appears that their intention is to exterminate every human on the island. Josie, Charlotte and Karen, meantime, hear the menacing sound of approaching footsteps and hide in the barn. It's the elves' arrival. The elves have also arrived at Mueller's residence concurrently. Mueller finds himself chased by one of the elves in his pantry and rushes to grab an axe, but it's too late. He is grabbed by another frightening elf, who strikes him viciously. When Mads realizes Mueller is in serious danger, he drives off quickly, dropping the radio on the ground in the process. Karen, however, intervenes to protect Josie from one of the elves, but she decides to take matters into her own hands after learning of the little girl's deeds, which include caring for the young elf and murdering one of the elves at the sawmill. She walks over to Josie and tells her that she is the only one who can keep them safe from the approaching threat. The latter prepares to accompany Karen into the wilderness, believing her words. Josie and Charlotte are split apart by Karen, who says she will make everything right, but on the way she turns to chloroform to bring Josie under control, abandoning her handcuffed in the midst of the wilderness. Josie wakes up later and finds herself in the woods with Karen standing menacingly over her. It's evident that Josie is being offered as a sacrifice in order to bring about equilibrium. Karen claims that she then turns away, leaving the young child to face her bleak destiny. A blood-stained Mueller, who is still alive, emerges from his home in the meantime, intending to assist the family in rescuing Josie. He was there when he had sacrificed a cow there, so he knows where Karen has taken her. He rushes to help the family get their daughter. Mueller and Liv, along with the rest of the family, eventually find Josie and Kiko, who is assisting her with the chains. The moment Karen appears out of the shadows and points a gun at the family, the parents are relieved to have their daughter back. Karen loses control of her weapon when, in an unexpected change of events, Kiko assaults her. Then a hideous elf materializes and attacks Karen viciously, ultimately resulting in her death. Josie's family and the others take advantage of the chance to flee. Josie makes an unsuccessful attempt to persuade Kiko to accompany them during this period. They come across another elf as they run through the woods, but they are able to avoid it. Mueller quickly locks the fence after the group arrives at the gates, and the generator fires up once more. Josie, though, is conflicted between leaving Kiko behind and being relieved to be back with her family. Now that the immediate threat has passed and the barrier has been fixed, Josie and her family prepare to return to the mainland. As they head off, Casper asks Liv to go with them. Liv first says no, but she eventually accepts when Mueller offers that they go. As the family drives away at the end of the series, Kiko is secretly hidden beneath their car. We really hope you enjoyed today's recap of Elves. Please leave a comment below of what you loved about the movie and why. Be sure to like the video, and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing so you don't miss any amazing content. Until next time, lights, camera, action. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.